It's episode 531 of the Locked On Texas Rangers podcast. Here on today's episode, I'm ranking the 5 best teams in Rangers history, ranking them on all kinds of different stats. You know, who's got the best rotation, who's got the best lineup, who's got the best bullpen, all that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Rangers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Rangers, your daily Texas Rangers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On the Texas Rangers. I'm your host, Brice Paterik. I want to thank you guys so much for making Locked On Rangers your first listen of the day. Make sure you're not, if you're already, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Brice Paterik, follow the show at Locked On Rangers, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever the heck you get your podcast. Now, this is a Saturday episode. I know it's a little weird having Saturday episodes, and I've been MIA all week. I was in Corpus Christi helping my brother who just bought his first house set up, move in. I also helped him move a refrigerator, a washer, and a dryer. Go pick those up, take them off a truck, put them in the house, which was a very harrowing ordeal. Shout out to my brother's neighbor for helping us get that fridge to the door, which would not fit. If you haven't ever moved a fridge, don't. Just don't. Just some life advice. If you buy a fridge, go ahead and get them to ship it and install it for you, because I don't care how much you save, it's not worth it. It's not worth the money. Anyway, that's where I've been all week, so I'll have episodes for you on Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to close out this month of January. Lots of fun stuff coming up on this episode. Now, let's go ahead and look at the 4 main categories that I used to judge the 5 best teams in Rangers history. I did best lineup, best bench, best rotation, and best bullpen. Now, best lineup. This is a tough one because there are a couple different eras of Rangers lineups that have been very, very good. Obviously, the best lineups weren't necessarily on the best teams, but 1999, like I wanted to, factor in the steroid era, but like even with that factored in, like this is just an absolutely absurdly good lineup. 1999, the year that Pudge Rodriguez won his MVP, rightfully so. I don't care what anybody else says. 1999 is the year that he should have won. He had a 6.4 WAR season according to Baseball Reference. Rafael Palmeiro had a 5 WAR season. Juan Gahn had a 3.9 WAR season. All these guys, just ridiculously stacked lineup from top to bottom. I mean, Pudge had a 914 OPS, 35 home runs as a freaking catcher. He also stole 25 bases. Also, Lee Stevens had a fine year, just very average for a first baseman, 24 home runs, 829 OPS, an OPS plus of 106. There were a lot of guys with an OPS plus over 100, so a lot of above average players. Todd Zell, 109 OPS plus. Rusty Greer, I think the best season offensively of his career. He had a 20 home run season, 41 home runs, a slash line of nearly the 300, 400, 500 mark, exactly 300 batting average, 405 on base, 493 slugging percentage, and 898 OPS. Really solid season for him. Tom Goodwin had a really great season. I was confusing him with Juan Gonzalez. Very different numbers. But this lineup had Pudge Rodriguez. It had Rusty Greer at his peak, had Juan Gahn at his peak, and Rafael Palmeiro. That is just an unreal lineup. That year, Juan Gahn had 39 home runs, just very ho-hum season for him. Slugged .601, on base of .378. Rafael Palmeiro, at age 34 in 158 games, this guy crushed it. 47 home runs for him, 30 doubles, hit .324, and on base of .420, slugged .630. That's a 1,050 OPS. This lineup was absolutely stacked from top to bottom. He also walked significantly more than he struck out. This is insane. 97 walks to 69 strikeouts. That is a ridiculous rate. Also, Mark McLemore did that. Also, Rusty Greer did that, 96 walks to 67 strikeouts, so about the same rate there. But this team was just so freaking good. It was unreal, and if they had just a half-decent pitching staff, just half-decent. Nobody had an ERA under 4.5 in the starting rotation. Nobody. John Wetland had a fine season. Jeff Zimmerman had a fine season. The bullpen was fine. It was okay. Pretty solid. But, man, if this team had any half-decent pitching, if they went and spent that money in 2001 on pitching instead of on A-Rod, man, that could have been a really, really solid team. They also didn't have Rafael Palmeiro, I don't think, in 2001. But 2001 was a really close year lineup-wise. I mean, that lineup was amazing. They had they did have Rafael Palmeiro. They didn't have Juan Gonzalez. They had Ruben Sierra at age 35 having a really solid season as a DH. Another great Pudge season. Alex Rodriguez's first year there had a 1,021 OPS. Ridiculous. Frank Catalano had a really solid year in 133 games, had an 882 OPS playing left field there. Mike Lamb was just fine at third base. Michael Young was okay, not great as a rookie at second base, but man, that team was really stinking good. And again, they just needed some pitching. All those late 90s, early 2000s pitching teams needed some help. But I mean, you already know that. Best rotation, 2013. It's close with 2016. It's really close. But I think what set me over the edge with 2013 is that the depth. 4 guys that were all really, really solid. 4 guys that were all extremely useful, helpful guys. Whereas I think it was 2015. I get all my years mixed up. I didn't have them in order, so this is screwed me up. But I believe one of the years where the Rangers had 5. Where'd we go? Nope, this isn't it. Oh my goodness. All right, one of the years the Rangers had 5 starters that were all above average. 2013 was by far Yu Darvish's best year, and for me, what set it apart was, 5 really solid guys. I mean, Nick Tepish was a little bit below average, an 85 ERA plus, but Alexi Ogando in 104 innings had a 3.11 ERA, a 1.33 ERA plus. Martin Perez had his best season, 124 innings, 3.62 ERA. Yu Darvish had his best season with the Rangers, 209 innings, 277 strikeouts, an ERA plus of 145. And the innings leader that year, Derek Holland, had his best year, 3.42 ERA and 213 innings, and an ERA plus of 120. That rotation was really, really solid. And it's hard to not pick 2016 when you have Cole Hamels and Yu Darvish. And a bunch of other guys doing some okay stuff. Colby Lewis was all right that year. But Yu Darvish only pitched in 100 innings that year. Martin Perez was the number 2 starter, and, he was just about average that year. AJ Griffin was about average that year. And even those guys, I mean, Martin Perez had, was an inning and a third shy of 200 innings. Cole Hamels had a really good season, 200 2/3 innings, 200 strikeouts, ERA plus of 137. But it was just a deeper rotation in 2013 and a better top pitcher that made me pick that. Best bench 2016. I mean, that team was absolutely stacked. There were a lot of guys that were coming off the bench that count as bench players because on Baseball Reference they weren't the primary one at their position. They had Shin-Soo Choo. Carlos Beltran had a really solid year. Jonathan Lucroy was really solid that year, 885 OPS in 47 games. Carlos Gomez came in for 33 games and was absolutely electric. Drew Stubbs was really solid in 19 games. Granted, only 25 plate appearances. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that small sample size. It's fine. It's fine. We're all fine here. And, Profar was also there off the bench to provide a little bit of value as well. But that team was solid. The best bullpen, this was probably the toughest one for me to judge the best bullpen, but I have to give it to 2016. It's the depth. It's so close. It was so close because 2013, people forget, was an incredible bullpen year. Joe Nathan had a 1.39 ERA. He had 43 saves. He struck out 73 in just under 65 innings. Tanner Shepard was unhittable that year, a 1.88 ERA. Neil Kotz was just unreal that year. Just absolutely unreal. Robbie Ross had a really solid year, and Jason Frazier also had a really good year. But besides those 5, I mean, going 5 deep in your bullpen is nothing to sneeze at. But there wasn't that much else there. Joaquin Soria was fine. Michael Kirkman pitched a lot and was really bad. And there were a few other guys that pitched quite a bit that weren't great either. I mean, we had 9 Derek Lowe games, which I don't even want to say that name. But 2016, the depth was just unreal. The top end wasn't quite as good. I mean, but it was legit 7 deep. Sam Dyson, Matt Bush, Tony Barnett, Jake Diekman, Alex Claudio, all absolutely nails. Absolutely nails that year. Also had Jose Leclerc, Jeremy Jeffress, those guys were all really stinking solid. Some of the other guys that pitched quite a bit weren't as much of nails. Sean Tolleson didn't have a great year by any means. 36 and a third innings and a 7.68 ERA. Keone Kela, a 6.09 ERA, which I believe really got inflated more than it needed to be in 35 games. Just a couple of bad starts for him, and the Tom Wilhelmsen sabotage experiment. But I feel like that is the best bullpen. It's a really close, and I am willing to hear arguments for either and maybe a couple others, but that is what I would say is the best for them, for this franchise. Now, I'm going to take a quick break and come back. I'm going to look at the top 5 teams actually ranking them. But first, I want to tell you guys about Built Bar. It's the new year, which means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit or eating healthier, make sure to include Built Bar in your plan. Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like candy bar. I've been telling you guys about these for forever. They are so stinking good, whether it's New Year's or not New Year's, whether it's the middle of the year or the end of the year, whatever. Built Bar is always a great choice. They're always delicious and always covered in 100% real chocolate. If you want to eat healthy, but it just gets so boring by like the end of January, like it is now. You're thinking, okay, maybe you've done a dry January or no junk food January, and you're like, all right, I need something that's good, that can get me through this difficult month. Built Bars are there for you to go ahead and eat those and feel good about yourselves while eating something that's absolutely delicious. So go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off at built.com. Now we're going to go in reverse order for these top 5 teams. I'm going to start with the 5th best team, go all the way up to number 1. Now, number 5. Some of you children might not have been alive. I shudder even saying that. The Rangers, January international signings that are 16, 17, were not alive when this team was around. That's right, it's the 1999 team. This team was 95 and 67, won the AL West. Third time this team had won the AL West. They did end up getting swept by the Yankees. I mean, it happens. It literally happened all the time to this team. But the offense was just so good, even in the Serie era. They were one of the best ever. The bullpen was really, really solid. Starting pitching was there. It was there. Outside of Rick Helling, who had a fine 4.84 ERA, a 105 ERA plus. Aaron Seal, I believe. There's some of you screaming at me that I'm mispronouncing this. I definitely am. But had a 106 ERA plus in 205 innings, a 4.79 actual ERA. John Burkett pitched just under 150 innings at a 5.62 ERA. Number 4 slot in the rotation, 25 starts, 140 innings for Mike Morgan, a 6.24 ERA. And holding down the number 5 spot, Mark Clark with an 8.60 ERA in 74 and a third innings. Like, jeez. Gosh. Why couldn't this team had just some pitching? This team could have gone so far, could have actually held up with the Yankees, maybe. I don't know. The Yankees were really good that year and probably winning it all anyway. But man, having to face the Yankees after winning 95 games, at that point the most in franchise history, is pretty dang rough, especially after getting eliminated by them in 2 of the past 3 years. That was not super fun for these Rangers. But man, this team was stacked with offense. I mean, Juan Gonzalez, Rafael Palmeiro, Pudge Rodriguez, Rusty Greer. Like, it just doesn't get much better than that. I mean, there were other teams with a couple more bats. When you had Will Clark in there, losing Will Clark was kind of big for this team, but they had him in 1996 and I believe in 1998. Yes, they did. But they didn't get their big bad DH Rafael Palmeiro back from, I believe he was in Baltimore at the time. So if they had him on the 96 or 98 teams, maybe those would have been the best offensive teams in Rangers franchise history. But again, still a really solid team, still nothing to sneeze at. 95 wins is really dang solid. Now, let's take a look at number 4 on this list. Number 4, a team that tied that record for 95 wins. I'm not necessarily going by just record, but I am using that as a general benchmark. This is a team with very top-end heavy star talent. Adrian Beltray was the only position player to have a 3 WAR season, or better yet, a 6.7 WAR season, according to Baseball Reference. He was 37, absolutely carrying this team on his back. A 32 home run season, hit 300 on base of 356. This is the 2016 team, in case I didn't say that 3 seconds ago. Cole Hamels had a 5.1 WAR season, was absolutely nails. Also had Martin Perez, doing things. Colby Lewis came in and pitched 19 games, only 116 innings, but was really solid when he did that at 1.23 ERA plus. Also, Yu Darvish came back from injury and was basically his normal self. 17 starts, 3.41 ERA, and 134 ERA plus. He also had 132 strikeouts in just over 100 innings. Derek Holland was fine. AJ Griffin did things. Martin Perez was there. He participated. God, it's so wild how low his strikeout rate was. 103 strikeouts and 198 and 2/3 innings for Martin Perez in one of his better years, which still wasn't that great. 104 ERA plus, so really just around average. An unreal bullpen, a starting lineup that was, okay. Robinson Chirinos did pretty solid in 57 games, 9 home runs there. Mitch Moreland had a 22 home run season. Ruben Odor really came on the scene, 2 points below 800 in his 798 OPS season, 33 home runs for him that year. Ian Desmond was an all-star, 22 home runs for him there, 20 home runs for Nomar Mazara. It's the general Nomar Mazara standard. Luke Roy came in, played 47 games, and was pretty solid, an 885 OPS. Shin-Soo Choo was fine in 48 games. Carlos Beltran was okay for what he was in 52 games, not anywhere near what the Rangers wanted him to be. And Carlos Gomez, the absolute unit, 8 home runs in 33 games, a 905 OPS that absolutely brought life to the Rangers, and they stole him from the Astros, which is just extra sweet. Absolutely extra sweet. Joey Gallo came in and did not much that year. Drew Stubbs, not that much that year in 19 games. It was fine. Pretty solid team. Would have liked more depth in the lineup, a healthy Prince Fielder, a Nomar Mazara that reached anywhere near his potential, and a Ruben Odor that would walk maybe once in a lifetime. Would have made this a really, really solid, really, really feared team. Also, this is, I believe, one of the best seasons of Elvis Andrus' career, an 800 OPS, 8 home runs, 7 triples, 31 doubles, a 362 on-base percentage. Really, really solid year from Elvis that year. I don't know why his WAR was only 2.9, but I believe that was one of his best years. I'm going to get to team number 3, but first I'm going to tell you guys about Bet Online. If you want to make bets on who is going to be in my top 5, well, you're too late because this episode has already gone out and I've already made those, so I don't think they're making better lines on that. But if you want to bet on, sports like football, it's coming to the end. But, there may be less football playing, but Bet Online has way more stuff for this playoff season. From scored totals, player performances, props, where the next next fired coach is going to land. BetOnline is the number 1 spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And with the new year comes a new updated desktop and mobile website. Sign up today, receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. It's not just football. BetOnline has basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, odds coverage, best in the business. From, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is the number 1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, this next team is probably my favorite Rangers team. I know you're going to say, why not 2021? Why not 2020? Why not 2019? No, those teams are garbage to me. They mean nothing to me. Absolutely nothing to me compared to this team. This is the team that made me fall in love with sports. This is the team that broke through the ceiling and won their second ever franchise playoff game, first ever playoff series. That's right, it's the 2010 Rangers team. This team was so good. This team was so good, and it breaks my heart that they got even year BS'd in the World Series because they should have won a World Series, just like they should have the next year and the year after that. But it's fine. It's fine. They probably would, even if they didn't collapse in 2012. They would have got even year BS'd by the Giants again, and it would have been even more frustrating for it to happen twice, and I would have some extreme hate for the San Francisco Giants, which I don't really have at this point. But this team was solid. As C.J. Wilson having a career year, absolutely crushing it that year. 204 innings, struck out 170, a 3.35 ERA. Colby Lewis was nails, 201 innings, 196 strikeouts, a 3.72 ERA. Scott Feldman was fine. Tommy Hunter had a really good breakout year in 128 innings. Cliff Lee was there. Not great in the regular season, but he was still there. He still did things. Naftali Feliz was nails. Darren O'Day was having a peak Darren O'Day season. There was also Darren Oliver, Frankie Francisco in the bullpen, and Alexi Ogando being absolutely destructive in the bullpen. They also had Chris Ray and a few other guys. Clay Rapata, gosh, that's the name to pull out. But the lineup was delightful. There was a really good season for Michael Young. But again, this offense all ran through Josh Hamilton that year. A 32 home run season, 40 doubles, a 1,044 OPS that year. OPS, yeah, it's just ridiculous. An 8.7 Baseball Reference WAR season. That is the second best in Rangers history. That is better than 2 of the 3 A-Rod seasons. The only season that A-Rod had that was better than him was, I believe, the year that he won the MVP, and that was an 8.8 Baseball Reference WAR season. Nelson Cruz was absolutely on one that year, 22 home runs in only 108 games. Vladimir Guerrero was fantastic for the Rangers, exactly what they needed from him. An 841 OPS, 29 home runs, 115 RBIs, which I don't normally bring up, but he was just so good at, bringing in runs. At age 35, when he was just DHing, he also had 4 stolen bases. He got caught stealing 5 times, but I think that's just delightful. Also, Nelson Cruz had 17 stolen bases, more than Julio Bourbon. Bourbon was 24 and played in 137 games and played almost entirely center field that year. Nelson Cruz only played in 108, but he stole 2 more bags and was more efficient at doing so than Julio Bourbon. That makes me very happy to see that. Also, Elvis Andrus was crushing it that year on the base paths, not on the slugging percentage, but a 342 on base percentage, 32 stolen bases. Ian Kinsler, 15 stolen bases, 9 home runs. I always thought he had a lot more good offensive seasons than he did, but that was not a super great offensive season for him. He was still an all-star in 2010, but definitely not one of his best seasons. It was his second all-star appearance. Had a 794 OPS, still elite defense. 2012 was his next all-star appearance, and that team might be making an appearance later on. But for real, that guy was so good and so consistent for the Rangers. 2011, he had 32 home runs. I thought he had more 30 home run seasons than that. Oh, he did. 2009. Excuse my language. He did have multiple 30 home run seasons, and he almost did it again in Detroit, 28 in 2016 as a 34-year-old. Man, this guy was so consistent and so good for the Rangers. That 2010 team was one of my absolute favorites. David Murphy had a really great season that year. Benji Molina was there and had the most memorable triple in the history of baseball, I would say. Maybe there's some other one that I'm not thinking of, but for me, that is definitely the most memorable and the best. Absolutely loved that team. Will always love that team. Will always have a very special place in my heart because they were so dang good and the team that got me to love baseball. So maybe I should actually hate them because they have done this to me, but I can't hate them because they were perfect and beautiful and wonderful. Now, second best team in Rangers history. This is a team with Adrian Beltray. This is a team with Elvis Andrus. A team with Yu Darvish. Now I'm starting to narrow it down. Also had Ian Kinsler there. That's right. It's the 2012 team. I honestly thought about making this team number 1. Just taking out the stupid freaking wild card game. The stupid wild card game that makes me so angry. I'm still happy that it's a thing, but it also makes me absolutely livid because the Rangers were so much better than the Orioles all year, better than everybody all year until they just fell off the face of the earth in the final month of the season. But that's part of it, so that's why they're not number 1. Adrian Beltray had a 7.2 WAR season, which I believe was the best of his career with the Rangers, at least. He was just absolutely incredible that year. He was just unstoppable. 7.2 WAR, I believe. Let's see. Yes, that was his best season with the Rangers, WAR-wise at least. Also had a 6.7 WAR season in 2016. But this was when he was absolutely on one. He could not be stopped. This Rangers offense was unreal. You had Mike Napoli playing 108 games at catcher with an 812 OPS, 24 home runs. Not quite the tear he was on the year before, but it's fine. Ian Kinsler had 40 doubles and 19 home runs, but still only had a 749 OPS, which is kind of weird. But, also very him. Beltray had 36 home runs, his most with the Rangers. Josh Hamilton set his, I believe, career high at 43 home runs. Let me double check that. The guy was crushing it. Also had the 4 home run season. Had a 4.0 WAR baseball reference season and finished 5th in MVP voting. This guy was on one again. The last All-Star appearance he would make in his career, a 930 OPS. Yes, that is correct. By far a career high, 43 home runs that year and 129 ribbies. Also an on-base percentage just below, actually, no, scratch that, just above what he did the year before, but not anywhere near the 411 on-base percentage he did in his MVP year. A 354 on-base percentage that year, and a 577 slugging percentage, which is also below what he did in his MVP year when he played only 133 games and still put up those redonkulous numbers. But Nelson Cruz had a down year by his standards, but was still pretty solid. Michael Young, a down year as the DH. I think he was still pouting a little bit in that year, but 2013 he really, and then on with the Rangers, he really kind of straightened it out a little bit. But this was the year that was one of the most solid top to bottom rotations by the Rangers. Matt Harrison had, I believe this was his All-Star season. Yu Darvish's first year where he got Cy Young votes. Also his first year in the league. 191 innings and 221 strikeouts. Derek Holland was, fine, present. Colby Lewis only pitched in 16 games that year. Threw a couple of complete games though in those 16 games. So 1 out of every 8 starts of his was a complete game, which is pretty solid. 105 innings. Scott Feldman was present. Started 21 games and pitched in 123 innings with a 5.09 ERA. Derek Holland again present. Ryan Dempster was there. An appearance was made. And this bullpen was also pretty solid. Joe Nathan, Alexi Ogando, Robbie Ross, Mike Adams. I think this is the best Robbie Ross year. Tanner Shepard didn't have a super great year, but Neftali Feliz, he was not in the bullpen. That was the year where everything went wrong. Also, Martin Perez was there. Mark Lowe. Really solid year from Koji Wahara, though. 175 ERA in 37 games, 36 innings, 43 strikeouts. Also, Michael Kirkman had a pretty solid performance in 28 games, a 382 ERA. But again, man, if Neftali Feliz didn't get hurt, then maybe they wouldn't make the Ryan Dempster trade, and maybe that team would have been even better and wouldn't have collapsed at the end of the year. It's fine. I'm fine. We're all fine. But we're getting to the number 1 team, which I think this team won 96 games, finished first in the AL West, beat the Rays, beat the Tigers, allegedly lost to the Cardinals. There's still no proof of this. I'm still choosing to believe that the Rangers won this 2011 World Series. That's right. It's the 2011 team. This year, Ian Kinsler was the leader in WAR. This was his best year by far, a 7 WAR season. Beltray had a 5+ WAR season. So many guys with 3.5 WAR or better. It's just absolutely insane. 8 guys with 3.6 or higher WAR. That includes Alexi Ogando, Josh Hamilton, Matt Harrison, Elvis Andrus, CJ Wilson, Mike Napoli, Adrian Beltray, and of course Ian Kinsler. Mitch Moreland had a really solid 16 home run season, I think, which was definitely his career high at that point. Ian Kinsler had his 32 home run season. Beltray had 32 home runs as well. Josh Hamilton kind of fell off, only an 882 OPS in 121 games, 25 home runs, 31 doubles. Nelson Cruz had 29 home runs, a 821 OPS. Michael Young really started to figure it out. 41 doubles for him that year, 6 triples at the age of 34, which is really impressive, and 11 home runs. A 338 batting average, which led the team, and I don't think that it won the batting title, but it was pretty darn close. And a 380 on-base percentage. He kind of got into his, all right, I'm not going to be the starting third baseman. I'm not Adrian Beltray. I'm not Elvis Andrus. I'm not Ian Kinsler. But I am going to make a difference on this team and absolutely go ham. And he did. Mike Napoli had his best year by far with the Rangers, 113 games, a 1,046 OPS, a 173 OPS plus. This guy had 30 home runs, 25 doubles in just 432 plate appearances. David Murphy, a solid David Murphy year, 11 home runs in 120 games. Craig Gentry was a solid contributor for him. They also had some Taylor Teagarden action, some Esteban Herman action as well, and of course the great Andres Blanco. Who could forget? Eddie Chavez was there doing some solid stuff for the Rangers. Adrian Beltray again on one. Yorvik Torrealba was there and participated. Did pretty solid. 7.05 ERA for a catcher who was defense first and performed up to that level. Absolutely up to that level. This was the year. 2011. That was the year. That's why I picked this rotation as being one of the... Actually, I should have put it in... I think I put it in my top 3. Maybe I didn't, but I should have. This is the year where everybody in this rotation, all 5 guys that threw more than... actually, all these guys were healthy. This is the most innings I think any Rangers rotation has ever pitched. If you exclude, I don't know, go back to the olden days. But in the modern era, since like the 90s, everybody pitched at least 29 games. 34 starts from C.J. Wilson, 32 from Colby Lewis, 32 from Derek Holland, 30 from Matt Harrison, and 29 from Alexi Ogando. The fewest innings thrown by Rangers started that year, 169. That's Alexi Ogando. Had a 125 ERA plus. Everybody in this rotation was had an ERA plus of at least 100. Colby Lewis was the average one, a 4.40 regular ERA in 200 and a third innings, at a 100 exactly ERA plus. C.J. Wilson had a 2.94 ERA in 223 innings, 206 strikeouts, a 1.50 ERA plus. Matt Harrison in 185 and 2/3 innings had an ERA plus of 1.30. Actual ERA 3.39. Ogando in 169 innings, which is pretty nice, had a 1.26 ERA. Derek Holland 3.95 actual ERA, 198 innings, and 112 ERA plus. This was just a solid team. Could have used a little bit better of a bullpen. As we can see, having a good bullpen, very important. But they had some good guys. They had some pretty decent guys. I believe Tommy Hunter was still there at the end. A bad Darren O'Day season, that really hurt this bullpen. Having a bad Darren O'Day season really hampered these guys. Arthur Rhodes, age 41, was not having a great season. Yoshinori Tateyama was also not super great in 39 games, a 4.50 ERA. Mark Lowe, what do you know? Suspect. But a 40-year-old Darren Oliver was absolutely nails in 61 games, 51 innings exactly on the nose, 41 strikeouts, very much a loogie guy. Nefi Feliz at his peak, 64 games, 32 saves, 62 and a third innings, and 54 strikeouts. This guy was on one, a 1.62 ERA plus. Darren Oliver had a 1.94 ERA plus as a 40-year-old. That's absolutely nuts. Scott Feldman was present in the bullpen, not super great. Mike Adams had a really solid season in 27 games. Koji Wahara was not super great for the Rangers. Tommy Hunter and Pedro Strop were solid in very small sample sizes. Could have used them a little bit more at the end. But man, that was really the one downfall of this team. A really solid bench. David Murphy and Craig Gentry and Mike Napoli and Andres Blanco. Taylor Teagarden also present for a little bit. But all those guys were really, really solid. And man, you also had super utility Michael Young for whenever Mike Napoli wanted to come in and not play catcher because he was not super great defensively. But man, you bring a 1,000 OPS, you can kind of catch. That'll make a difference. And also kind of wild that this pitching staff was able to do so well with Mike Napoli catching so many games. Like it's kind of wild for me that he caught so many games and yet this staff was so stinking good. He's caught 61 games. Yorvik Torrealba caught 98 of those games, and Taylor Teagarden caught 14. Also Matt Trainer, 7 games. Shout out to Matt Trainer forever and ever. But man, this team was insanely good, insanely fun, and I hope the Rangers can actually win a World Series so the demons from this team don't feel as bad. It's always going to be a bummer that, that group didn't win one. But again, they were so good and they brought so much joy to me and I know Rangers fans everywhere. That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Rangers. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. Not exactly sure about what, but it'll be about something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. But until next time, don't forget to enjoy baseball.